Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our missions to help families grow closer through reading and to give parents the tools they need to raise their kids, to respect, to love, and include everyone they meet. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Sasha Graham. She is here to celebrate Tiny Ninja Books. Before we invite Sasha into the studio, we want to invite all the authors that are listening to the show to please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. We have an author's click here button at the top of the page, and if you click on that button, you can discover the many ways that we can help you celebrate your book here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You can be a guest on the podcast. It's fun. It's easy. It gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book, and it also doesn't cost you a thing. No need to pay anybody to facilitate your visit. You can also find out how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. And if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that can let your families know that your book is worthy of their consideration. We can also let you know about our fantastic promotional packages that will celebrate your book on the podcast, through commercials, through messages to our 75,000 plus social media followers, and also display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. All 4 corners of the continental United States are covered. Learn all about that and more by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the author's click here button at the top of the page. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Arizona. Our guest is here today to celebrate Tiny Ninja Books. Please welcome to the show, Sasha Grave. Hey, Sasha, how are you?
I am doing really well. How are you?
I'm wonderful. A little bit cold here in Boston. I imagine it's a little colder than it is in Arizona.
It is. I just checked, actually, and we are hitting a high of 87 today.
Awesome. Well, we're hitting a high of 35 today. So we're going to meet somewhere in the middle and both be comfortable. Tell us about Tiny Ninja Books, please.
Certainly. So Tiny Ninja Books is a collection of books for kids around ages 4 to 8. But I like to say that really anybody ages, 2 to 92 will enjoy them. They are centered on this idea that we are each born with our own tiny ninja who is the very best version of us. So imagine that part of us that's compassionate and brave and kind. And all we have to do is listen to our tiny ninja. The latest book is called Whitney Wins Everything. And at its core, Whitney Wins Everything is about a really competitive little girl who discovers this life-changing magic of being part of a team.
Mm-hmm. So neat. I love that you mentioned that one of the ninja superpowers is compassion and kindness. I don't think we celebrate those as superpowers enough in our society. And I really think that those are incredible superpowers that can really make a huge difference in the world.
Well, and it's interesting because oftentimes when I talk about Tiny Ninja Books, people want to use them as sort of this teaching tool, right? Or sort of this discipline tool. And that is not what this is. They're not books about lessons. They are very much have a takeaway, like I think almost every book does. But this idea that we can use our own tiny ninja to channel our own compassion, because there are times when I don't feel compassionate, right? And that's a startling and uncomfortable feeling for me. But when I remember that I have this tiny ninja who's the best version of myself, and I ask myself, what would my tiny ninja do in this moment? It's really helpful to have it personified in that way, even for me as an adult.
It's interesting that you said when you notice that you're not being as compassionate as you should be or as you want to be, you feel bad. And I think that's kind of a neat thing to talk to kids about, is just because I think a lot of us have that instinct. We know when we're not being our tiny ninja. We recognize that. And hopefully we all get a little queasy and want to do better, and want to be the best, want to be that tiny ninja.
And I think also when we want to be our best self because it makes us feel good, so oftentimes, and this was a little bit of the motivation for creating this collection, was that I noticed that kids get all of these exercises. So they have coaches and teachers and parents and caregivers and whoever it is in their lives, these trusted adults telling them to do things or not do things all the time. And what I want for my kids, and quite honestly, what I want for myself, is for me to be guided by this inner voice, for me to recognize that when I do the best, by myself, in response to myself, is when I feel the best and when I am my best self. So if I'm intrinsically motivated rather than being motivated by, the risk of punishment or, of having privileges taken away, that's what we want for our kids going out into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want our kids living fearfully.
Right.
Just making decisions so I don't get hurt. I don't want to get punished. Giving them that zest for life so that they're waking up every morning and saying, yeah, this is going to be a great day. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to make some friends. I'm going to be kind to people. I'm going to be the reason somebody smiles today.
Oh, wouldn't that be a miracle? Yeah.
That would be awesome. So who are the folks, who are the other characters we're going to meet in your series?
So the first book is called Milo Does Not Like Mornings, and that is about a little boy who, at its essence, just doesn't like to get up in the morning. It was inspired by people near and dear to me and that frustration that comes, but his mom tells him that she has this important meeting that she needs to get ready for, and he needs to get up and, get going in the morning, and he almost doesn't. But a little bit of a spoiler, his tiny ninja helps him out, and again, the result of that, his mom is pleased and that makes him feel good, but really he feels good because it was the right thing to do. And, so that one is about Milo and his tiny ninja and his mom, and Milo has a dog. And then in Whitney, there are these wonderful characters. Landon is a boy who Whitney plays soccer with, who is not very good. And Whitney cannot understand why he would play soccer if he is not very good. Like, she can't wrap her head around this. Like, if you're not winning all the time, why would you want to do this? Landon's cousin in the book is named Lily. And Whitney sees Lily at school one day handing out birthday invitations and doesn't get one. And she is hurt and confused because up until this point, she has understood that everybody loves a winner. And she doesn't understand why she wouldn't be invited to this birthday party. And when another child tells her, it's because you'll just win all the games at the birthday party. Whitney is so confused and then goes to her soccer practice where she finds out that they don't keep score at the inner soccer, league at this level. And then she's just devastated, right? Like, could this day get any worse?
Boy, I think I can relate to Whitney. I was somehow convinced to coach a youth soccer team after coaching a very competitive high school team and playing in a very competitive high school and college team, and was asked to coach this team where they didn't keep score. And I was like, what's the point?
So I didn't realize that you played high school and college ball.
I did. It was a lot of fun, and it was interesting. I wasn't very good, until my, a visiting coach came in, and my first year playing in high school, I didn't play a minute at all. And then in the preseason leading up to my junior year, we had a visiting coach come in, and he just said, "Jed, you're like a tank out there. You just hit everything and you knocked everybody down, and that was wonderful." And I'm like, it's okay to do that? You go, yeah, this is the way you do it legally. And from that point on, I never missed a minute. I just played every single minute through the rest of high school and college. Again, I wasn't very skilled, but I was able to knock people down.
I mean, I think that that's a skill, though, right?
Well,
Not everybody can do that. It's just a reframing of your skill set, I think.
Exactly.
I had a similar experience where I coached my second son. His name is Indy, after Indiana Jones. I coached his team when he was in second grade, and these kids were wonderful. But I think out of the 11, maybe 1 or 2 had any interest in organized sports at all. And I had meticulously planned out our first practice, right? I had all these drills. I had big plans. I had speeches planned. And it became very clear very quickly that this was not that team. So we get to our first game, and I mean, it was, the other team comes out. They've got a bona fide point guard. They're running a motion offense. It was just a blowout. But we didn't keep score. So I was momentarily happy because these kids had a great time. Of course, everybody on my team either thought we won or thought we lost by, 2 baskets, which was not the case. And, I thought they've been spared something. They've been spared this experience of losing so terribly. And then I realized as I prepared for our next practice, the problem, which was that without a goal as a team, everything gets reduced to individual accomplishments. And the reason why we play team sports is to have a common goal. And without that, you might as well play tag, only, nobody would be it because, nobody's going to win. So I love having my own beliefs and understandings challenged like that. And I thought I knew how I felt. I thought, boy, little kids should play for the love of the sport, that we should encourage them without, the score and that stress to learn how to play basketball and love basketball for basketball's sake. And what I realized through that experience is that part of my love of team sports, and I think most people's love of team sports, is the score. That contributes to the overall, agony of defeat or joy of success.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're sharing this. One of the things that I got out of coaching the soccer team where they didn't keep score was the adults might not have kept score, but the kids did. For certain. Because I would sit down and go, hey, guys, there's no score. And they go, really, coach?
Because I got it right here.
Yeah. When I was growing up, we didn't have this almost 100 years ago, but we didn't have a lot of organized sports. But we played every day, and we would go out, and we'd pick up teams, and we'd play, and you'd lose, and then you start over again. You pick up a new team. So you were constantly either winning or losing, and if you lost it, you felt bad about it. You might, kick a few rocks, but you knew that there was going to be another game. You're going to get another chance, and I think we can learn a lot from losing too. Just getting out there.
Undoubtedly.
Understanding, like, hey, what do we do wrong? What can we do better? Sometimes people are just better than us at certain things.
I think that it hits on something really important too, that defeat motivates us. And if we tell kids that we're not keeping score because we want them to develop a love of the game, what we're really saying is, I don't think that you can handle losing, and that will be such a painful experience. I'm going to spare you that as a child, when in fact, let's face it, you're going to lose a lot more times in your life, whether you play sports or not. There are going to be a lot of times where you're not the best in the room, and you can either use that to motivate you or you can avoid it for the rest of your life. And, I think that there are people certainly who do that and are perfectly happy. But I also think that for most of us, that learning how to lose and how to use that to motivate us, it results in happiness later in life.
Yeah. A lot of happiness. It results in a lot of advancement in technology and medicine. And just think, if you hadn't rewritten the first draft of Milo, that's every time we sit down and we start something, we realize we can make it better.
Well, and think about you as a magician, right? Like, I
Oh,
mean, what if you had just given up when that first trick didn't work, or, didn't work the 15th time? I have such respect for people who are good at magic, because that, to me, it's like somebody who's really good at playing guitar. Because when I see that, I'm like, those are hours and hours and hours of practice that resulted in you being able to entertain me in that incredible way.
Yeah. My favorite question that I get asked a lot from kids is, have you ever made a mistake on stage? And I always answer, I haven't done one show where I didn't make a mistake. Did you notice any today? Good, because that's my real superpower. That's my tiny ninja, keeping it going when we make a mistake.
Absolutely. And that's it, right? You got to keep just going, pretend like everything's fine.
Yeah. So I read on your website that at one time in your life, you were an executive at Disney.
I was.
What was that like?
It was incredible. I was the vice president of national publicity for the Walt Disney Studios. So there was one other VP and I in the department, and we would split all of the movies. And I was very, very lucky to get all of the animated features. So I worked on movies like Finding Nemo and Monsters Incorporated and Freaky Friday. It was a really, really amazing time to be in the movie industry, and at Disney in particular. We had these huge spectacle premieres. We had the premiere for Pearl Harbor on an aircraft carrier that was in Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So it was an incredible experience.
Yeah. And it must be a bit of a culture shock to have gone from that ginormous team to being an author where it's you and your illustrator and hopefully a couple other folks to help you bring books around.
It is interesting, isn't it, that we can have so many facets to our personality that, things on both ends of the spectrum could be so satisfying. Writing is, as you know, it's intensely personal, and I do it a lot of times to process my own emotions or my own experiences, those of my kids. And so it goes from being incredibly personal to incredibly public, right? To reading my book. I love visiting classrooms, like you. I love going out and meeting kids and sharing Tiny Ninja books. And it becomes something new at that point. It starts by being very much mine and having a certain meaning to me. And then when it goes out, it's yours.
That's neat. I'm curious, while you were writing the books, were there moments in the books when you were sharing something that was personal, and once you saw it on the page, you thought, I don't know if I want to share that part of myself right now?
Certainly. That happens all the time. I have just dozens of Tiny Ninja stories that I've written. And one of them, for instance, is called Lucas in the Library. I don't think this one will ever become a Tiny Ninja book, but if it does, you heard about it here first. It was very much based on my son when he was a first grader, and he picked up concepts really, really quickly, and his teacher would notice that he would finish really early, and he loved to read. And so she eventually gave him permission to go to the library all by himself when he finished. So he would go to the library, and it would be him and the librarian only in the library. And so I wrote this story about this experience for him, and it was the first introduction of the Tiny Ninja, and the Tiny Ninja sort of gave him the courage to go do this thing he loved, because he had to walk all the way through the campus by himself. We have, big outdoor campuses here in Arizona, so he had to walk outside and all the way to the library, but his Tiny Ninja said, you were going to love this so much. But when I read the story out loud, which of course I always do because that's how most of these stories are presented, I couldn't get through it without choking up. It was so personal and such a telling moment for myself and for my son to have this wonderful teacher who really saw him and knew where, how she could water that flower to make it bloom. And that to me at the time was too close.
Yeah. What a great experience, though, for your son to have that teacher to find that tiny ninja inside of him.
Oh, and teachers are just the best, right? I mean, for this teacher to do this thing for him and for only him, where she really saw him, it was very much it was a game changer.
Hey, the illustrations in your book are just wonderful. They're really, really fun. Tell us a little bit about your illustrator, please.
Oh, she is just a marvel. Her name is Angelina Valieva. She actually lives in Uzbekistan. I found her through my publisher. So when I submitted Milo to the publisher, Gatekeeper Press, they said, "Oh, we think we have the perfect illustrator for you." And, this is a scary thing because I had all of these characters in my head for so long. I pictured them. I know exactly what they looked like. And then to send it to an illustrator and then, get back, in this case, what her version of these characters were, it took a minute, to settle in. And now I just could not imagine them any other way. She brings these characters to life with, expression and color, and the dynamics are just mind blowing for me.
And it must have been the fact that you had worked in animation with Disney and we're surrounded by all this incredible art, in that part of your career, that must have put a little extra pressure on it.
I don't think it was pressure so much as inspiration. That I think it's very much how I see my stories, that because I love animation so much, I love Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki's movies, so like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, this incredible Japanese animation. And, of course, like I grew up with Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and all of these masters, that I could really see them that way. And I also, to that point, I got to be in the room during just countless interviews with these masters of their craft, where I listened to these people talk about either illustrating, where they work and work and work at something until they get it just right. That they don't give up after one or two drafts. Like they are working and working and working. And also these screenwriters and storytellers, that Pixar in particular talks about this, where they say, it does not matter how good, the fur looks on the animal in the movie if the story isn't good. If you don't care about, Sully in Monsters, Inc., it doesn't matter how good his fur like flutters in the wind, right? And that was, that came to me at a time in my life that I was just starting to think about writing children's books, and really, it really changed the way that I thought about story and the dedication that I had to getting that just right.
Yeah. How many books are you envisioning in the series?
I would love to do one about every 18 months. Mm-hmm. That feels like a really good, but it's hard. Boy, it's, bringing a book to market is, it takes a long time. The writing part, I always feel like is the easy part. I get that part done. I go through just dozens and dozens and dozens of drafts because I tend to write long, and children's books just, you need to keep cutting and cutting and cutting. And then it goes to my editor. My editor, then she is wonderful, and she gives it to me very straight and says, tells me what I need to know. And from there, then it goes to my illustrator. And I mean, you can tell by her art that it is truly art. It takes a long time. And she includes these wonderful seek and find pages, where you find the tiny ninjas, and those take a long time. So I would love to do one every year and a half, but we'll see.
Well, it's neat. One of the things that we love here about children's books is just, I hear parents all the time, saying, "Oh, my kid wants me to read the same book for the 4,000th time." And I'm always trying to remind them, you can read every book 4,000 different ways. It doesn't have to be the same thing. Your mind doesn't have to explode. And the Tiny Ninja books look like the books that you can have a different experience, talk about a different thing, go through, just do a picture walk through the books and talk about what they see and where the tiny ninjas are. Her
illustrations are so rich. You are very, very right about that you really can just create your own stories and your own narratives as you go through. And then the seek and finds not only were one of my favorite things as a kid, doing the Where's Waldo, type of thing, but, or do you remember the Harry Scaries where they would have the little, it was almost like a little bug or something that was hidden on each page. Mm-hmm. And so, but also now as a parent, I of course had that same experience where my kids would always pick the longest book, to put off bedtime. And I thought, boy, if we have seek and find pages, you can just do the seek and find pages. And for those pre-readers, they can do those on their own. Mm-hmm. You can sit there and daydream while your kid finds all the ninjas, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. My kids would always pick, I have a speech impediment and I have a real hard time with the letter F, especially if I'm tired. And I would come home from a tour after driving 7 hours and we'd sit down and they would always grab Fox and Socks. And I'm like, no. Hey, you're talking about your being an author is, writing is a small part. And sometimes it's the smallest part of the book business. And we have a lot of authors and a lot of aspiring authors here on the show. You've taken Tiny Ninjas and you understand that it's a business. On your website, you have pillows and sandals and all sorts of merch. Can you just take a minute to talk about that and how important that is and how you were able to weave that into your business?
Certainly. I think that having a background in marketing and publicity is a benefit as a writer because it is a business and very few people have that background. So I was lucky to come at it from that angle. I also think that I looked at it as a whole. So rather than I've written all sorts of stories for kids but I really liked this idea of a Tiny Ninja Books collection and that immediately it sparked all of these ideas. And I thought this is more than just one or two books. Like this can be a whole collection. And from that point, I started thinking about it more as a collection in its entirety, which included, these fun things. It's fun when you love something to have merchandise for it, to be able to get the mug or the shirt or the, water bottle. And it is a way for me to also sort of inspire myself, that when I'm thinking in images and thinking about, okay, well, what would I want? That to create a Tiny Ninja water bottle is surprisingly inspiring for me.
Mm-hmm. Neat. One last question. Are you hoping at some point that Tiny Ninjas becomes an animation?
Of course. That's the dream, right? That I would love for it to be either a series or, a feature animation film. I think it would just be dynamite. It really lends itself to that, I think. And one of the things when I'm talking to other writers or to actually anyone, to kids, to anyone, and they have a big dream like this, because this, I'll admit, is a very big dream. I always say, why not you? Mm-hmm. People are doing it. Why not you? And that's how I feel about this. That people are selling stories to Disney and to Pixar and why not me? Yeah. So why not Tiny Ninja Books? Absolutely.
And when that happens, when that happens, and you're in charge of the launch, where you're going to have that big, massive, spectacular launch?
Oh my gosh, my premiere. Where will my premiere be?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just be incredible? There are a lot of places that I love in the world. But I think that it would very much depend on what theme we go with. That if it were a soccer theme like Whitney is, I would have everybody from Ted Lasso there. I would have a huge, Ted Lasso, I think, is just, a gift to our society right now, exactly when we need it, and so we'll see. I don't know. I would love to have it somewhere like Sedona. I love Sedona and all of the red rocks, but I think probably I would do something huge in LA, like maybe the Rose Bowl like we did for Remember the Titans.
There you go. Well,
yeah.
I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Tiny Ninja Books, also see some of that merch we talked about. So where should they go?
So my website is tinyninjabooks.com. And we have all sorts of information and products and things there, really fun stuff. And I also would want to mention that if you are looking to buy books, my books or anybody else's books, I love bookshop.org because, they benefit your local bookstore, which I think is just amazing.
Yeah. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Tiny Ninja Books, Sasha Graham. Sasha, thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Richard Capriola. He is the author of The Addicted Child, a parent's guide to adolescent substance abuse. Really, really powerful and very important episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Sasha Graham. Please be sure to check out Tiny Ninja Books. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.